Hello and welcome to In Between and Neither Interludes. This is the second to last video. This is the 2010 version of chapter 5. The last video, the upcoming video, will be the final video in this interlude series of In Between and Neither. It will cover the 2011 version. So this is the final chapter of the 2010 version of In Between and Neither. This, before I get into it, this was the chapter that ultimately, I guess, made me decide that no, this is not how I wanted to end it, and that I wanted to rewrite it. So, get into it. After I finish reading the chapter, I will talk about my thoughts on this chapter, and so we'll see you there. In Between and Neither, chapter 5. If there is one thing the struggle with a medical system has given me, it has to be a very existential view on life. I've had to consider my own place in this society, as a person. Am I a man or a woman? Am I something else? Am I human? Does it matter? Eventually, we'll all die anyway, and this body won't mean a thing. Why obsess about it? Why do normal people care about living their lives the way they do? Why are they sacrificing their lives to raise offspring? What is the point of offspring? On and on. There are more questions than one could ever hope to answer. In the end, I'm still not really sure. Only that death isn't unavoidable. Just a collection of glitches which lead to a cascade organ failure, and that finding answers is the only way to truly live life. Hence the conclusion, I'm an intersex person and I'll never know what's going on exactly. This doesn't work for me. On many occasions, people have told me that maybe I will just have to learn to live with not having the answers to these questions which I'm seeking, which merely evokes a stubborn refusal of this alternative reality which they're trying to make me believe in. Anything which is of a physical nature can be researched and tested. Worst case, I will just be a perfect research object for medical science. That's all fine by me. Imagine there being this door inside a house which you grew up in as a child. Imagine being told repeatedly by your parents that you are to never open it and never look at what's at the other side. At the other side of the door is knowledge and answers. Few people can resist finding out what's behind the door. Many will try to get a quick peek, or better anyway, regardless of the punishment. My body is the door. My body is what's standing between me and knowing the truth. Only my body can provide the answers. It doesn't matter what's behind the door, even if it's just a blank wall. It's still an answer. It's still the truth. Why are these doctors telling me that I cannot look behind the door? I do not know. But I do know that there is nothing more important in my life than to know, regardless of the consequences. Regardless of how long I will have to fight and struggle. Regardless of anything really, because it's the only way that I can prove to myself that I am still alive. The weeks following the events at the auditorium and me starting to live at Catherine's place have been somewhat of a dream to me. I cannot recall ever having had so many worries vanish almost instantly like this. Yet as the days pass, I begin to feel this nagging doubt deep inside of me. I'm still different. Even if the people around me have accepted it, and do not make a fuss over it. I also still don't know what my body is like exactly. Heck, I don't even know for sure how many and which organs I do and do not have, at least on the reproductive side. It gives a very undetermined feeling, especially when it comes to social situations. How am I supposed to react to certain jokes and certain events? What should I think when I see others flirt with each other or form couples? Everything is still just about regular men and women. I'm neither. even if others accept it. Some respond when I try to explain this by saying that I'm whatever I feel I am, but as part of the problem. I have no idea what to feel. Gradually, I'm beginning to realize that I cannot escape learning the facts about my body unless I want to feel miserable inside for the rest of my life. When I tell Catherine this, she just nods in understanding. Since I started living at her place, she has become quite familiar with all of the more intimate details of my situation, such as the hormones which I have to take. I ordered these without prescription via the internet, because no hospital in this country wishes to recognize that I need them to deal with a hormone balance which doesn't match my body. It is embarrassing and something I feel ashamed of, if only because I don't understand why things have to be like this. It's been a few years since I started taking these hormones at my own initiative. I had tried to again get something out of the largest hospital in this country, where they have a so-called gender team, which primarily treats transsexuals. It was my second attempt at that hospital, as I didn't see any other alternatives, since the only other hospital with a gender team in this country probably wouldn't be very different in their approach, or so I assumed at the time. The first attempt involved a talk with a psychologist at this gender team, followed by some poking by a clueless gynecologist who didn't seem to even know what he was looking for, to then conclude that there was nothing unusual to be found. The subsequent appointment with the same psychologist was a shouting match, in which this psychologist kept asking me whether I wanted to become a woman, and I half-heartedly agreeing with it. In the end, he concluded that I was a guy with some tendencies towards transsexualism, yet displaying very unusual behavior for a transsexual. They referred me to the sexologist, with whom I had a number of appointments. During the first appointment, one of the first things he said was that I was clearly deceiving myself with my claims of being intersex. He convinced me to just play along with a transsexual protocol at the hospital, which I eventually did. Or tried, rather. This second attempt consisted out of 2 appointments with a psychologist of the same gender team. My mother was present at both times. The first appointment seemed to go very well. I was talking with a different psychologist, and she seemed very open to making the protocol more lenient for me. I was going to be able to start with hormone therapy right away, have fewer talks before they were going to look at my case, and decide whether they would let me continue. So far, so good. Then I had a second appointment, during which the same psychologist held this endless monologue in which he made it clear that if I wanted to be accepted within this transsexual treatment protocol, I would have to strictly obey the rules. There would be no leniency, no earlier start with hormone therapy, and of course there would be no question that I might possibly be intersex. I would be seen, treated, marked, and labeled as being a transsexual, and that would be the end of it. It was at that point that I finally snapped. I was sitting alone with a psychologist in his room, with my mother sitting outside in the hallway. When this psychologist started handing down the rules without explaining the sudden change, and without giving me any opportunity to protest or interject, something just broke inside of me. All these years of pent-up frustration came surging to the surface, causing me to throw down my belongings, which I was holding at the time, down on the floor and stomped out of the room, slamming the door shut behind me. I could have thrown something heavy at the psychologist's face. The heavens know I wanted to. But I still had enough self-control to realize that I would have made things considerably worse, even if it would have felt really, really good. Once in the hallway, I tried to calm down, which I succeeded in quite well. I walked towards where my mother was sitting and sat down next to her. When she asked me how the conversation went, I replied that they had withdrawn all the previous promises. Within minutes, the coordinator of the gender team and a doctor or so were standing next to us, asking my mother whether she would accompany them for a moment. She agreed and left with them to the room which I had left moments earlier. After a while, I'm not sure how long exactly, The coordinator asked me to join them as well. It was the psychologist sitting behind the desk, with my mother and I the other side. I got a lot of accusations thrown at me. The exact details I cannot and refuse to remember. All I know is that after what seemed like an eternity of trying to defend myself, I got up in the midst of one of the psychologist's rambling sentences and left the room. Filled with seething anger, I went to the coordinator's office and demanded that every outstanding appointment which I had with them would be deleted, which he did. I also informed them that I would never be back there again. Not that the coordinator cared at all. He just kept smiling at me, with a kind of facial expression which one generally only sees on feeble-minded individuals. I must say that it felt really darn good to walk out of the hospital that day, knowing that I had concluded what felt like ages spent at a mental hospital, except that the patients are the sane ones, and the doctors the crazy ones. While driving home, my mother informed me that during the time when she was called away, she had been informed by the psychologist that there was a suspicion of anger issues on my side, and they asked her whether there were any occurrences of domestic violence. Basically, whether I was hitting my own mother regularly. Even after she denied these accusations, they still suggested that maybe I should be referred to a mental institute. I still think that they're the ones who should be dragged off to such a place, if not an institute or prison for the criminally insane. It were they who brainwashed me, traumatized me with stories of me having to be transsexual, while never considering my side of the story. They never even bothered to do one single test. To make a long story short, after leaving that hospital, I decided to start with hormone therapy on my own, finding an online pharmacy and ordering the medication which I needed, being an estradiol preparation and a testosterone blocker. Thanks to my GP of the time, I was able to get my hormone levels checked, which I used to determine the proper dose of each medication, with values obtained thanks to the internet. Even my GP didn't really believe that I was intersex, and even told me so shortly before I left her. What I did find out, thanks to this hormone therapy, is that my body produces more testosterone than a regular woman, but far less than a man, only about a quarter. Anyway, that is a short story on how I ended up using these medicines without prescription and got stuck medically without any answers or clear diagnosis. So what about one false diagnosis later? Catherine asked, as we were sitting in the living room drinking tea as usual. That was a while after that, after I had an MRI scan performed outside the country and had been trying to get something useful done with the results from that, as the diagnosis given was that I am a hermaphrodite. All these doctors refusing to acknowledge the diagnosis, pretending that there isn't anything unusual going on, combined with that autoparaginecophilia nonsense diagnosis, made me believe that nobody in this country really wants to help me. I'm not sure going to yet another hospital would be useful, I respond, taking a sip from my cup. You want to give up trying to find help? I lower my cup and try to collect my thoughts. No, nothing like that. I do want to find help and answers, but I feel like there is no one who wants to help me. It's as though intersex is a taboo subject, even in the medical world, like we're not supposed to exist. I sigh deeply and stare at my teacup. Just saying that makes me feel so terrible, as if it really is true, and my existence and those of other intersex people is a blemish on this earth. I'm just tired of fighting, tired of not knowing, of being different, tired of so many other things which I cannot even name. I feel even more horrible now. Damn it, why can't I just be regular and boring like everybody else? Why does my life have to be like this? When Catherine embraces me and starts stroking my hair, I suddenly feel tears making their way down my cheeks again. That night, while I'm lying in bed, I cannot stop thinking about our conversation. I I feel like I'm totally deadlocked. I cannot live without having these answers which I seek. Yet there doesn't appear to be any way to get them. A bitter feeling rises up into my throat. Maybe it would be better to quit now, rather than keep trying. If things aren't going to change anyway, if I can find answers and help, it would be so much easier. I turn onto my other side and try to ignore these thoughts, but to no avail. I feel so weak, and this voice is so strong. It promises the end of all pain, of all suffering and frustrations. All I have to do is to follow its instructions. It's so easy. Then I think of Catherine and some students at school, which I've grown closer to over the past weeks. They would probably feel so saddened if I were to end my life. I smile. No solution is perfect, I guess. At least they have regular lives and don't have to carry this burden which I am carrying. They cannot even imagine what it must be like. I will miss my time with Catherine and the others, though. Not that I would have to worry about it afterwards. I sigh. It's such an impossible choice which I am faced with. To keep going in the assurance that it will involve more pain, suffering, and with a distinct possibility of no improvement and no new knowledge. Or to swiftly end matters right now and to avoid all of that. To give up. I don't like giving up. But as far as I can tell, the war may already have been lost. I turn onto my back and stare at the dark ceiling. For a moment, I consider waking up Catherine, but then I shake my head. What would I tell her? That I'm thinking about suicide? Instead, I get out of bed and put on my clothes, then sneak downstairs. Putting on my shoes and coat, I open the front door and step outside. When I close the door behind me, I can feel a calm sensation descend upon me. I just need to walk around a bit, think things through. I'll be fine when I return. I'm not sure how long I've been alternately standing and sitting here on this bridge. It's somewhere past midnight and the streets are virtually deserted. Only an occasional car and pedestrian make their way past my position on this bridge. The bridge spans the largest river around here, and when I stare down into its waters, all I can see is darkness, which even the streetlights cannot penetrate. It is so peaceful. As another tear rolls down my cheek, I don't even bother to wipe it away anymore. It's not like anybody cares whether I'm crying or not. Even the pedestrians passing by do not even seem to glance at me, probably making their way back home in either a steady or slightly unsteady fashion, the joys of going out and socializing with alcohol. Turning my attention again to the waters below, I still cannot decide between the offered options. All I know is that the thought of going on like this will hurt more and is mired in uncertainty. I'm not sure I can't. Leaving that thought unfinished, I get up from the sitting position, which I've been in for the last moments. I really have no idea how long I've been there. There's still no hint of dawn at the horizon, so it cannot be that late yet. The thought of Catherine, lying safely and warmly in her bed, flashes through my mind, followed by an image of my own empty bed. Grabbing the guardrail at the side of the bridge, I suddenly decide to climb it, so that I can sit on top of it. Doing this, I find the dark waters now right underneath me. A wry smile touches my lips. Why not? Sliding forward on the guardrail, I close my eyes when I feel that I'm beginning to fall. The last thought to cross my mind is an expression of relief at finally being able to let go. And that is the original ending of In Between and Neither. That's originally just these 5 chapters. And well, let's say that when I wrote this, it was a few months before I would try to commit suicide myself. I didn't know it at the time yet. I didn't know that. I didn't know that I would be in a similar situation a few months later. I mean, things weren't going well at the time. I mean, I guess the chapter kind of gives it away, because it's pretty much a strong reflection of my own internal state at the time, and I find it interesting to when I look back on this original version of In Between and Neither, and also the rewrite in many ways, is that it is really just this like the original chapters, like the first 2 chapters, maybe the first 3 chapters of In Between and Neither, they kind of like this original story with original Alice, and then somehow it transforms into more like just me. Because the things described in this chapter about the experiences at the hospital and such, that is pretty much what happened to me. So I pretty much described exactly what my experiences were. And yeah, I mean, there were far more experiences like that, but I tried to focus just on this one thing. And apparently I did not have any creativity left to make it into something specific to just Alice's world. No, this was pretty much just my own story verbatim, just like that, poured in there. And also I was trying to, I guess, ask myself a couple of questions. It's not so much that I was trying to write Alice's story, but I was trying to figure some things out for myself. And well, I guess I did make a decision there. I did decide that, well, I faintly recall that while I was writing this chapter back in 2010, that I remember thinking, like, I was not intending to have Alice try to commit suicide. But halfway during the chapter or so, while I was writing all these depressing things, it was just one of those, well, what the heck kind of feelings. That's what I recall. And that's what happened. And ultimately, that's also the same course that it took for me. Fortunately, I could rewrite these 3 chapters later on, so Alice did not have to die. And my own attempt did not work out either, so I'm also still alive. So it's a bit of a at least intermediate happy ending, I guess. So as far as this interlude goes, there will be one more video covering the final chapter as it currently exists, the 2011, the rewrite of this chapter as I rewrote it in 2011. And it was intended to not end, so that was not a real ending, and that's also why I still don't want the story to end. Alice just has to find some kind of happiness. I think that's even if I do not want In Between and Neither to be this carbon copy of my own story in so many ways, I want Alice to be her own person, but I do want her to be happy. And the nice thing, I guess, also is that even if I will never be as happy as Alice will get in the story, at least in that world, in Alice's world, it is real. So that's going to be part of the really big rewrite, I guess. Rewrites, yeah. Well, 3 chapters, chapters 3, 4, and 5, they will get a bit of an overhaul compared to the 2011 version. Probably drag a few elements back in from the 2010 version, even if it's not, doesn't stay in the same location, but some elements are nice and I would like to get those back. So, one more video in this interlude and it will be over, I promise. The rewrite is also a lot less dramatic, so consider that to be the bit of a nice last video in this interlude before we resume with our regularly scheduled content, if there is such a thing. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, or at least thought this was interesting. I hope to see you next time. If you like this video, please like it, subscribe, all those things, become a patron of me. The links are all down below. And hope to see you next time. So, thank you for listening and see you next time.